Welcome to the Caribbean Edge. My name is Dawn Wilson. I'm your host, and I have the beautiful Miss Shelia Bruno joining me. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Don. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. I can't complain.
Good. Very
How
good.
are you?
I'm well. No complaints on this end.
Good. And thanks for joining me again. So I met Sheila last week on the Caribbean Edge, where she joined a bunch of women, two other women, just talking about re-entry and supporting and what that looks like having their husbands return or re-enter into society. So I want to talk to Sheila one-on-one because of her journey with it. And she's in a different position than everyone else and just a lot to share, which she shared a lot on that episode. So please check it out on the Caribbean Edge. But Sheila is an international speaker. She's a re-entry coach. She's an author of Wife After Prison, Caught in the Aftermath, a mother of two and a grandmother of five, living in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
and is married to Kevin, who served 28 years in prison, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And why was he incarcerated?
He was incarcerated for aggravated robbery.
Okay.
He actually did two bids. First time he did 8.5 years on a 10-year sentence, and within 9 months of his release, he was gone back on a 65-year sentence, which he did 20 years flat, released in 2010.
Okay, so tell us about you, because I think it's important to know the Sheila before.
Okay, so the Sheila before Kevin and I reconnected, because we dated in the 9th grade. Kevin found me over in Bagram, Afghanistan. I had been working overseas since 2007. I worked overseas for a total of 10 years, from Iraq to Afghanistan and to Kuwait. And so I was in Afghanistan when Kevin and I reconnected. He found me on Facebook.
Okay, so what was childhood like? What was your parents like?
Childhood was normal. You know, parents worked a lot to provide for us. You know, it was just a normal household. I have one brother and one sister. I'm the youngest of them. However, I tend to act like the oldest because they say I want to run everything. But yeah, it was just a normal household. Again, both my parents were entrepreneurs. My mother was a hairdresser, and my father owned his own cement company. So it was a normal childhood, nothing traumatic. No traumatic experiences there, so it was pretty normal.
Okay, so then you met Kevin and fell in love. Did you like him back then? Because you met young.
Yeah, we went to school together. We went to school together, and we dated in the 9th grade in 1976. And I was like madly in love with him, that 16-year-old kind of love, because he was so kind. He was so kind and friendly, and he didn't try to force me to do anything inappropriate with him. He was, you know, not like the other boys would. And as I mentioned last week, you know, back then I had really no to low self-esteem. And, you know, in my eyes, I was very unattractive, you know, very skinny, just kinky hair, you know, dark complexion. And just for him to take an interest in me, and he was really known, played football. And so for him to take an interest in me, yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was easy for me to fall in that 16-year-old kind of love. But after the 9th grade, after school let out, I never saw him again. You know, I never saw him. He never came back to school for the 10th year. And when we reconnected, that's when he began to tell me about his childhood, and his childhood was anything but ideal. When he came to school, he wore a mask. He wore a mask. He was a very unhappy child. He suffered some traumatic experiences. in his life, but in coming to school was like that safe space for him. He was able to laugh, he was able to have fun. But when he left school, it was he took off of that mask and became another person.
I want to take you back to your 16-year-old self that you said was so insecure. What would you say to young girls now who may find themselves insecure?
What I would say is that you're beautiful regardless, and to learn to love yourself and surround yourself with people who will encourage you and let you know just how beautiful you are. I would say that I didn't have that, I didn't have anybody to pour into my life. And what I did in high school, I was the class clown because I wanted people to like me. So I was the class clown to overshadow my insecurities. So they wouldn't look at me as the little skinny, nappy-headed, dark complexion girl that I was. So I would say to 16-year-olds today, you are absolutely beautiful, and to love yourself and to talk to yourself. Because what I did was I would get in, and still today, I would do mirror exercises, just get in the mirror and tell myself how beautiful I am, how much I've accomplished. Thank you, Shelia, for allowing me, to do the things that I do. And so I would say surround yourself and find your mentor. Get a mentor, somebody who can speak into your life and pour into your life. Right now, today, I surround myself with coaches. I had to have a coach before I was able to afford coaches. I would YouTube University. I would go to YouTube and Google personal development. And I was following one lady, Lisa Nichols, who is now my coach. I followed her for 2 years on YouTube. And then when YouTube took me as far as I could go, then that's when I needed to pay her because I needed that, that additional push. So I would say find you a mentor, somebody who could pour into your life, because I knew that there was more to me than what I was seeing, but I didn't know how to get that out of me. And so I needed a coach to help me to change my mindset. I did some mindset development, helped me to navigate through all of the chatter that was in my head. So that alone has helped me to become the person that I am today.
Thank you for that. I wanted you to speak on it because you mentioned it. And so many of us as youngsters, depending on parenting, depending on culture, friendships, somehow you convince yourself that you're not good enough, and you are.
Right.
And so you don't need to meet that person to make you feel special because you are special to begin with.
Absolutely.
So thank you for addressing that. So you met Kevin, had that crush, fell in love with Kevin. And so he wore a mask, you said, at school, football player out there, quite popular, falls in love with this skinny girl who doesn't have the confidence in herself at the time.
Yeah.
And so what was he masking?
He was masking his insecurities because he was very insecure. Kevin stood 6'3". Even when he was 12 years old, he was really, really tall. And he's very sensitive. And he had some run-ins with bullies who were, although he was 6'3", he was constantly bullied. And he too wanted people to like him, right? So he would be the nice guy just to get people to like him, to not look at the fact that he's 12 years old and he's 6'3". Right. And he had an incident once before when he went out of town and he and his brother was getting on the bus to head back to Houston, Texas. And the bus driver told him that he had a child ticket. And the bus driver said to him, and he called him the N-word, you're not 12 years old. You need an adult ticket in order to get on my bus. So he had a lot of insecurities, which I didn't know. I didn't know about. He wanted acceptance. He wanted to be accepted. And I think it was because he was bullied a lot and he just wanted people to like him. Yeah. So when we started getting into all of the friction in our marriage, and I began to study the adverse childhood experiences and trauma, I understood that I couldn't be mad at him. I couldn't be mad at him for what he went through, right? I could support him, but I couldn't be mad at him.
Okay, so when he was sentenced, were you there, or
No.
It was when he was released?
Yeah. I didn't even know that he had been to prison. All I know is after the 9th grade, I never saw him again. And it was in 2014 when he found me on Facebook and he told me, we were chatting on Facebook and Messenger, and I noticed that there was this long gap in between me getting a response for him, but it said Kevin is typing. And so when he finished, this was this long message. And in the messages, when he was telling me about that he had been to prison, he had been to prison twice, and what the charges were. And so it didn't faze me. He told me about his childhood. So it didn't faze me. It didn't deter me to say, oh no, he didn't been to prison. I don't want to have nothing to do with him. It didn't, because I understand that, especially in our youth, we make dumb mistakes. Right. So that didn't deter me. But what hadn't he told me that he had been to prison, I wouldn't have known it, because he is highly intelligent, very, very intelligent. But I appreciated the fact that he didn't wait until day 7 to tell me that he was in prison. Within 2 hours, he wanted me to know that he had been in prison. And then he gave me the opportunity to choose, okay, do I want to continue to talk to him, or do I want to say, look, you've been in prison, you got baggage, I'm done, right? But I didn't. I didn't say it like that.
Yeah, so you knew the Kevin that you knew. And so, of course, there's a trust, there's a connection, there's some love, there's some emotions involved with your decision as well.
Yeah.
And he was honest, and you had to respect that as well. He's not hiding his past. You probably can't hide it for long anyway.
Right.
Even some people might choose to. So then you get together.
So within 7 days, we began to talk on the phone every day. I'm in Afghanistan and he's in Kuwait. And I worked for a company that's based in the United States. So I had an American phone number. So it wasn't like it was long distance or anything like that. So we could talk every day. And we began to Skype every day. And every day that he called me, I would have this list of questions. Because I was like, okay, if I'm going to get involved with this guy, I need to know everything. And so I would write down questions, because the time difference between Houston and Afghanistan was 12 hours. So while he was asleep, I was awake writing questions. And so when he called me, I would answer, I would say, hey, I got some more questions. And he would answer all of the questions. And I told him, I said, normally, if I'm interested in someone and someone is interested in me, then I would run a background check on them. And he said, well, you can save the money. You can if you want to, but you can save the money, because I'm open to tell you anything that you want to know about me. And he was. And so after that, and the thing about it, Don, I had prayed and said, God, I'm ready to be found. I'm ready for my husband. And I had all of these, I want him tall, he has to love you, and all of this. And so when Kevin came back into my life, I got a little frustrated with God. I was like, why have you allowed this man to come back in my life after 38 years? I was like, I'm good, God. My heart is good. I don't need any distractions. And then God just kind of reminded me of my prayer. And I was like, oh, okay. I did say I want him tall. I did say he has to love you. I did. And so again, we began to talk, and he told me, he said, Sheila, he said, the next lady that I sleep with will be my wife. And that's one of the things that I prayed about too. I said, God, I want whoever you have for me to say, there will be no intimacy before marriage. I said, I don't want to say it to him. I want him to say it to me. And when he said that, my mouth went like, oh, did he just say that? Did he just say that? So he did. But anyway, within 7 days, he said, I would like you to be my wife, and I'm going to go talk to your mom. He went and talked to my mom. He went and talked to my brother. And of course, my girls was like really, really hesitant. Like, no, mom. Well, one of them was like, Mom, I don't know. And one of them was like, Mom, look, if it makes you happy, I'm happy. And so within 7 days, I said yes. And 53 days later, I was due to come home on vacation. Working overseas, I would come home every 3 months. And I was due to come home. And so we decided that when I came home that we would get married, and we did.
Wow. So I think women will probably ask, or men too, if he's incarcerated for so long, there's no sexual activity going on. So let's get a little personal, because I know you told me nothing's off limits.
Nothing's off limit. Nothing is off limit, because this is a needed conversation. And as I mentioned before, I have a support group with over 1,300 women in it. And Kevin and I even did a Facebook Live titled "Let's Talk About Sex."
Oh, nice. Yeah. So let's talk about sex. How was it the first time?
Oh, Lord God. Look, God, I thought we was going to talk about him. Okay. Don, it was amazing. It really was amazing. But let's dive into something right quick, because some of the women in my group, one lady told me a couple of weeks ago, she said, my husband was incarcerated for 30 years. And she said, I wrote that whole 30 with him. And she said, putting money on his books, going to see him. She said, he has been home for 3 years and we haven't had sex.
Whoa. Because he just doesn't know how to anymore, scared.
You know what? There's so many reasons as to why. And as I talk to men coming out of prison, I ask the tough questions. Yeah. And some of them have said he has been so used to satisfying himself.
Yeah.
Self gratification that a woman can't satisfy him. There was another lady who said that she and her husband was being intimate, and, after they finished, she was laying in bed. She looked, he got up, he was sitting on the side of the bed, and he was satisfying himself. And she was like, what's going on with this, And he said to her, you got yours, and now I have to get mine how I'm used to getting it. So it's a lot of that. It's a lot of that. And another thing is, Kevin shared when we did the segment, Let's Talk About Sex, that magazines is a high commodity in prison, because they are used to looking at magazines and satisfying themselves. And so they get used to that. And so when they come home, they have this body, this woman, they don't know how to do with it. They don't know what to do with it. And I have to put this disclaimer out there, prison affects people differently, because there are some that said, oh, not my husband, not my man. Okay. I've had some of those. I've had some of that, oh, no, not my husband, only to call me a couple of weeks or a couple of days after he's home saying, oh my God. One lady even told me, she said, Miss Shelia, she said, I've been in your group since 2018. And she said, I was just listening. And she said, I didn't believe what you were saying. She said, but he's home now. And she said, everything that you were saying was the truth about him.
Yeah, I can believe you. I'm just, you're stating it so well. I can definitely imagine if you're gone away for those 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and now you have a woman. What do you do with her?
Yeah. And one day I had a meeting with some returning citizens. And so as I was leaving the meeting, one of them came back, because they know that I have the women's group. And one of them ran behind me and he said, Miss Shelia, He said, I want you to tell the ladies in your group. He said, tell them that it's a high probability that their loved ones is messing with prostitutes. And I was like, what? And he was like, yes. And I said, why would you say that? And he said, because many of them have talked about their performance, what they're going to do when they get home, how they're going to do what they're going to do. And they get home and they have performance anxiety. Whereas if they get with a prostitute, she doesn't know anything about him. She doesn't know, his level of performance or whatever. And so after he told me that, it was 2 weeks later that two of the group members told me, Miss Shelia, I found out that my husband was messing with prostitutes.
And how did they react to that? Because that's...
Of course, they're very, very disappointed that, here it is. Here it is. You're married, you have a wife, but you choose to go outside of the marriage and be intimate with someone else. But there's another thing. One of the lessons that I learned, the very first lesson that I learned in being married to Kevin, is the condition called arrested development. Okay, arrested development in the term of psychology is when the psychological development is incomplete. Mm-hmm. And it happens due to trauma, due to grief, due to parental neglect. And a lot of these guys who went to prison, they went to prison at early ages. They went to prison at 15. They went to prison at 17. So emotionally, they were not developed yet, right? Their psychological state wasn't developed. They go through prison, 30 years in prison, 28 years in prison, 25 years. They come out. Emotionally, they're not developed. They're not. So they behave like that 17-year-old.
Yeah. They lack life experiences.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And when I learned that, how I learned of that phrase is very within the 30 days of our marriage, Kevin behaved really, really immature like. And I was like, what the world is this? What have I gotten myself into? Yeah. And so I called his mom because I just wanted to share this like, and she said, Shelia, she said, Google arrested development. I was out for a walk and she said, when you get back, Google arrested development. And so when I did, I didn't find anything related to psychology. I found something related to medicine. It's when the body parts are underdeveloped. But the more his behavior begins to change, I revisited arrested development. And that's when I found out the definition as it pertains to psychology. The psychological development is incomplete. Yeah. And so you see childish behavior, you should see immature, you see pouting, you see temper tantrums, you see all of this. You see a grown man behave as though he's 14, 15, 16 years old. So that I had one member said, she said, I'm so exhausted.
Yeah, it's like if you have kids, you're also raising your husband.
That's exactly what she said. She said, it's as though I have another child. Yeah. The behavior is as though, and this is why I talk about this, Don. This is why I raise awareness, because a lot of times those who are incarcerated or released, their lives are magnified. You've been in prison, you did 30 years, but the voices and the experiences of the family members fall by the wayside. Nobody's talking about that struggling wife. Nobody's talking about how his behavior has vicariously attached itself to her. And now she's traumatized. Now she's depressed. As I was, now she's eating sleeping pills, like they're M&Ms. Nobody talks about the family experience. We talk about the experience of those who have been incarcerated. And that's why I refuse to be quiet. Yeah, I refuse to be quiet. Not also, and I said this is like a love-hate relationship. I love the guys coming out. I want you to succeed. However, I want you to realize that there's some issues there. There's some psychological issues there. And on the other hand, I'm telling the wives, the mothers, or whatever, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself because they are coming out with some reckless behavior. 2 of my group members were killed by their significant others within 4 months of their release. They go to prison. A lot of them that enter into those gates put on a mask. They put on a mask of survival. They turn into monsters. They turn into people so that they could survive in prison, right? But when they walk out of that gate, that monster doesn't get left behind. The behavior doesn't get left behind. It's coming out with them. One lady told me, she said, she found me. She wasn't even in my group. She wasn't even on social media. I received an email from her. And she said, I need you to, can you call me right now? She gave me her number and I called her. And she just went to talk to me. She said, he was gone 10 years. She said, he's been home 6 months. She said, I have a black eye. And I said, was he violent before prison? And she said, he was not. She said, he was not. And so I talked to her. I said, well, you need to have a conversation with him, talk to him about seeking treatment. And then within a month, she called me again. She said, I have a dislocated jaw. My jawbone has been dislocated. And at that point, I was like, you can't stay into that. You got to leave him. If he's unwilling to accept the fact that there's something wrong, if he's unwilling to get help, you cannot stay in that relationship. And so she told me, she said, I'm going to leave. She was in Alabama. She said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to Atlanta. And that was on a Friday. She said, I'll call you when I get to Atlanta. And I never heard from her. And so I began to call her like that Sunday, and I would call her that Monday. And I never got an answer from her. And to this day, I never heard from her again. So I don't know what happened to her. So this is why, and I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful for your platform who is willing to talk about this. In 2017, when I started talking about this, and I would go to reentry summits and reentry conferences, and they would say, is it anybody that has anything they want to say? I'd raise my hand. I'd talk about my experience. They didn't want to hear that. Nobody want to hear that,
Well,
Don't talk about that. Yeah, but I wouldn't stop talking. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, wouldn't stop talking.
So women, the women, and we're also not growing to our full potential if your husband or your partner, so many of our men go off to prison for whatever the crime is, right? Like you mentioned, often at an early age. Some may come out to women that they've known before, others are left alone. And from what I understand, half of them go back to prison as well. Because they can't deal with the outside world, which changes every day, over years later.
Yes. October the 19th, 2020, I'm sitting in the hotel room in Miami, and I receive a text message. It was late at night, and the text message said, I want to go back. And I was like, who is this? Who is this? Because my name and my number is known in prisons, throughout Houston. And I couldn't wait to the next morning, and I called and I said, who is this? No, when they answered the phone, I recognized the voice. And I was like, hey, man, what you talking about? What are you talking about? You want to go back? After doing 21 years, you want to go back? And he said, Ms. Bruno, he said, I got a good job. And he said, I stay at a nice transitional home. He said, I got money in the bank. He said, but this is too much for me. He said, I could do prison all day long, but there's so many responsibilities outside that I didn't have in prison. And he said, I just said I wanted to go back. I said, well, going back is not an option. You don't have you don't have an option. So we talked and we talked and we talked and we talked. And so now he's good. He's good. But there have been some that have gotten out. There was one gentleman who got out, and I think he did like 50 something years. And whether you do 2 years or 40 years in Texas, everybody's going to get $100. You get $50 when you leave out the back gate, and you get $50 when you go to see your parole officer. Well, this gentleman, he took the $50 and he went to the liquor store and he bought him some liquor. And he sit up there and he drank it and he got intoxicated. And he went back into the liquor store and pretended that he was going to rob it so that they would call the police on him. And they did. And so he sat outside in front of the liquor store, and he waited on the police. And he said, "Take me back." He said, "Take me back. What do you expect for me to do? All my life I've been in prison and you give me $50. He said, "Take me back to prison."
Yeah, the reality is we taxpayers spend billions of dollars
Oh yeah.
on prison, and yet someone comes out with $100, and that's for Texas. We don't even know what some of the other states does. The reality is, what do you do with that?
Yeah, what do you do with that? And that's my thing now also is the reentry organizations. There's so many reentry organizations, and what I'm telling them now is that, get them a job, good. Find them a place to stay, good. But why aren't we talking about mental wellness?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we not talking about that? You can get them a job all day long. You can find them a place to stay. But if you don't deal with the psychological impact of trauma, then they're going to be a repeat offender, because they won't be able to deal with it. And I'm telling you, I have become so vocal in that. Said, why isn't mental wellness breaking news like everything else? Because I watched my husband. I watched a kind, loving, supportive husband transition to somebody that he didn't like. And he would apologize to me. And he said, "Shelia, I'm so sorry." He said, "I'm so sorry that I pulled you into this messed up life of mine." He said, "I shouldn't have never married you." He said, "You didn't deserve this." And one thing that I can appreciate about him is that he was honest. He was honest about his struggles. And one thing about it, Kevin got a job working in the same prison that he was released from. He worked in the prison up until December last year, prior to COVID, when they had a layoff. He worked in there as the reentry specialist. And he would share with the guys, telling the guys, "Hey man, when y'all get out of here, go talk to somebody, because the struggle is real. Struggle is real." He would hammer down on that, to the point that some of the guys was like, "Oh, that's just Bruno, that's just Bruno," or whatever. But they began to come out and say, "Mr. Bruno, I need some help." Mm-hmm. So I'm forever grateful to him for exposing that and not hiding the struggles. And so today, although Kevin and I have an impending divorce, we will always be friends. We will always be friends, because we're going to do this work together. Yeah. We're going to continue to raise awareness about this thing, because there are good men coming out of prison and they're messed up.
Yeah. People on the outside are messed up as is, without even going to prison, and that need it. So many of our children need to see a psychologist. Yeah. So can you imagine if that part of your life is taken away and you're not prepared? So as you mentioned, the mental struggles, once they come out, that there's not a good system in place for that. There doesn't seem to be a good system in the prison system as well. Yeah. So we're spending billions of dollars, but none of it is going towards preparing them mentally to deal with the real world.
Right. I was talking to a gentleman, he called me. He said, "I heard you on a podcast." And he said, "You said something that resonated with me." He did 32 years. And on that particular podcast, I was talking about arrested development. And he said, that resonated with me. And he began to share his childhood experience with me, and he had never shared it with anybody. And the both of us just cried. And I said, while you were inside, why didn't you go into medic and say, hey, you needed to talk to somebody? He said, I did. He said, I did one time. Said there was so much noise in my head that I went to talk to someone. And he said, the first thing that they want to do in prison is give you medication, put you on a medication. There's no talk therapy, you know. There's no talk therapy where you can talk, you can get some tools, some practical tools, some things you could do. And he said, I told him, man, I come down here to talk to you, and the first thing you want to do is put a pill in my mouth. And so he said he left. He was very, very angry. And he said he never talked. He never talked to anyone until he had talked to me that day. And so when they get out and they contact me, the first thing that I do is say, hey, let's get you signed up with some, through this agency that we have here called Harris Health. It's a community clinic. But the thing with that is it may take them 6 months to see anybody, you know? And so I'm out 6 months, I haven't seen anybody. I begin to think I'm okay. So when it's time to go to the appointment, you like, I've been out here 6 months, I've been okay. And then they don't go to the appointment, right? Because it takes so long. But there was one gentleman who did 40 years, and I knew he needed to see somebody. So I paid out of my pocket so that he could be able to go and talk to somebody, because he told me I'm having nightmares. And he said, I saw somebody get their head cut off while he was on the inside. And so I was like, we don't have 6 months to wait. So I paid for his sessions out of my pocket.
Thank you for that. So why is it taking 6 months?
Because it's a backlog, and especially with COVID. Prior to COVID, I don't think that it would take as long for them to get in. But now it's like a 6 to 9 month wait. And again, I like to see them talk to somebody within 30 days. Within 30 days, go talk to somebody, right? But like I say, the longer that it takes for them to get an appointment, then they're kind of adjusting. They're like, oh, I'm good. And a lot of them say that they're good done before they get into a relationship. And that's why I started this piece called Reentry and Relationships. You talk about reentry in a job, you talk about reentry in a house. Please don't exclude reentry in relationships. They don't, you went to prison at 15. You've never had an adult relationship, you know? And that's what Kevin and I had to break down. It's like, I need you to be the head of the household. It was like it was reverse roles, right? But I take part of the blame for that, because I was like, oh, he's been gone 28 years. I want to make sure, he experienced that. Oh, don't worry about it. I did all of that. And then I got tired. And I said, I need you to be the head of the household.
So how long before you told him you wanted him to be the head of the household?
2.5 years.
That's a long time.
That's what I'm telling you. And that's what I'm telling you. I've learned a lot of lessons, Dawn. I've learned a lot of lessons. Right?
So what was he doing in this 2.5?
Well, he would contribute, right? I had been overseas, right? And so I had a 6-figure income consistently, right? And so prior to Kevin and I getting together, Kevin had maybe $700 worth of bills per month. And then you come here, we're right at 33,000, 3,000, something like that. So I didn't want to put that, bam, you the man of the household, him, bam, take this $3,000. No. So I just continued to pay the majority of the bills. He would contribute, but after a while, I was like, because I retired from working overseas because I wanted to be home with him. So in 2014, at the end of 2014, I was like, I'm going home. I'm gonna be my baby. I want to go home. My husband. So again, I had enough nest egg saved for this, and I would continue to take care of everything. And then I was like, and then another thing that I think I started seeing the behavior change in him, you know, and the meanness.
So what were some of that? Give us details. Like what would he say or do?
His emotions flatlined on me, meaning it's like he felt nothing for me. There was no talking. There was no conversation. There was no intimacy. He was mean. He was mean. He was not the guy that I married. His behavior was kind of chaotic. And prior to that, you know, he used to have a habit. There was a habit of not shutting the doors and not the pantry cabinets and all of that. And I said, you know, you got a habit. You don't shut the cabinet and the pantry doors or the drawers or whatever. And I said, I just go ahead and do it. He said, don't do it for me. Don't do it for me. He said, tell me to do it. Because think about it, Don. In prison, there's no drawers and cabinets and opening and closing and all of that. And so I was like, okay. But then when his behavior changed and I would say, hey, you left the cabinet open. And then he went off. Somebody been telling me what to do all of my life. Now you want to tell me what to do. I was like, well, you told me to tell you. And that's when, you know, the mood changed. The mood changed. It was such a roller coaster of a ride.
Did you seek therapy?
I did. And you know, the thing about it, you know, he went first. And he used to tell me, you need to go talk to somebody. And I'm like, I ain't been to prison. I don't need to go talk to somebody. You need to go talk to somebody. Right? And so when it got to the point where I was just confining myself into my bedroom and just sleeping pills. So I gotta go talk to somebody. And I did. And the first day, you know, she allowed me to share. And I was sharing about my marriage and Kevin and all of that. And she listened at me. And about the third one, she said, no, we're not going to talk about Kevin today. We're going to talk about you. And she said, Kevin has his therapy and his therapist, and you have me. She said, if you guys want to come together eventually, meet in the middle for couples, then we'll do that. And so she began to talk to me. And there were some things that I was doing that was afflicting some pain to his already, to what he was already going through. So I had to be able to look at me and say, you know what, Sheila, you need to change that behavior.
What were some of those things, Sheila?
Don't make me cry.
I'm so sorry.
Don, some of the things were, I began to look at him like he had all of the issues because he had been to prison. And I didn't have any, you know. I was just associating everything with prison. You act like that because you've been to prison, you know. If you hadn't been to prison, da 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 da. And so I had to have the blinders removed from my eyes. One thing that the counselor said to me is, she said, I would get irritated by the way that he folded the towels. I was used to folding the towels a certain way, neat, order, stack. The big one did it. And when he folded them, he would fold them really big, right? And so I was sharing that with my therapist. And she said, look at that cabinet. And she said, read that sticker on the third drawer. And that sticker said, how important is it? And she said, read it again. And I said, how important is it? She said, read it again. I said, how important is it? And she said, exactly. She said, how important is it the way that he folds the towels? She said, you got to give him credit for even trying. And not just look at it like your way is the right way. The man is folding the towels. Sheila.
Looks like you froze there, but yes, you're so right. Your therapist says, how important is it? And that goes towards a lot of things in normal life, in relationships. How important is it?
Are we still here, Dawn?
Yes, we're still here. I think you're still you're frozen though, but we're here.
Look like you frozen.
Oh no. Let's see if it clears up a little bit. Let's at least keep talking. There
okay. Yeah. And
that's such an important lesson though. How important is it?
How important is it? And then that helped me to gauge the conversation that I wanted to have with him, because I realized that some of my behavior was if I was pouring water on a drowning man. So I had to like stop and ask myself, say, Chick, how important is this conversation right now? Do you have to have it right now, or can you have it another time? So that was a lesson that I learned from her, and that I used throughout the relationship. When I said, okay, Sheila, how important is that?
Yeah.
And one of the tools that his counselor gave him was to stop when he wanted to respond, to stop and ask himself, is this the response of the 20-year-old, or is this the response of the 56-year-old? Because like I said, with that Arrested Development, there was some responses that was like an adolescence.
Yeah.
So that was something that she gave him. And that was something that he shared with the guys on the inside. You know, who's responding? Is it the 20-year-old responding, or is it the 50-something-year-old who is responding?
But how could you expect a 50-something-year-old to respond when he's lost all those years of mental growth?
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, you know, I see guys who come out and they are full of pride, and they know they struggle, but they don't want to say that they struggle. You know, they suffer in silence. For so long, Kevin suffered in silence. He didn't want me to know that he wasn't the man that I thought he was. So it was like he suffered in silence until he could no longer do it. It's like a pressure. The pressure just made the pipe just explode.
Yeah.
And again, you know, I think he's a wonderful guy. And some may say, well, if he's so wonderful, why y'all getting a divorce? It's just I've been on that road. I've been on the roller coaster. It's like it was like 2 years of good time, 2 years bad time, 2 years of ups, 2 years of down. And I don't want to send Sheila through that again.
Yeah. So you're great as friends, but as husband and wife, it's difficult.
Yeah. And we talk almost every day. You know, if I need him to do something, to come over here, change a light bulb or whatever, he's here. If I cook something, I got something left, I got something, come get it. You know, I just want him to be the best version of himself. He's an incredible guy. And it's one thing that we can see the greatness in a person. We can see how amazing, how incredible a person is. But unless that person sees themselves in that way, then nothing happens. And that's what I see him. He is a phenomenal guy, and he has a gift. And but again, he has to see himself like that versus, me seeing him. That's how I see him. That's how I always see him.
Well, listening to you, I just sounds like Kevin needs to find Kevin without the pressure of being in a relationship and in a marriage. Because as women, we bring our own fantasies, our own expectations. And he's making up for lost time, so to speak, in who is Kevin today.
Yeah.
And so until he figures that out, to be in a relationship is going to be a challenge too.
Yeah. And he has said that. He has said that. He said, Sheila, I need to find me. And he's like, he got out in 2010. We reunited in 2014, and he was on his way to finding himself, right? And then you get married, and you got this alpha personality wife, right? And so he began to lose what he had found. Right?
Yeah.
And so and he says, I just need to be able to find me. And I can't knock that. I can't knock that, right? Because that's how it is with me. I can't lose me again.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I can't lose me again. So yeah, so I can't knock him for wanting to find himself. Yeah. You were incarcerated for 28 years. Whatever it takes for you to be the best version of yourself, hey, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Talk to me, Sheila, about re-entry as far as the mindset once a person has to find a job. Did you go through that with Kevin? Because so many jobs ask you on the application, if you've committed a crime.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Kevin, when he got out, his parents had a place for him to stay and had a job lined up for him. And then he applied at a cement company, and they are felony friendly, and they hired him there, and he stayed there for almost 3 years it was. And then his dream was always to work inside of the prison. And there's a nonprofit organization called Prison Fellowship. He got on with them, and he worked as their reentry specialist, helping the guys to reintegrate back into society. And the thing about that was, it was so awesome that his office at one point was right across the hall from the cell that he once occupied. And the same back gate that he walked out of, he walked the guys out of the back gate. So he never had a challenge with really finding employment, but there are some companies that say they are felony friendly. And I've had some guys to get hired on, but when they do this extensive background check, then they lay the guys off. And that's my deal with companies that advertise. We're second chance companies, with felony friendlies. Okay, if you're felony friendly, take off the stipulations, whatever that is. They say it has to be 7 years. Well, some of these guys, their felonies were 15 years old, but you still let them go. So it's not always easy. And the thing of it also is, while the guys are inside, some of them don't do anything. They don't go to school, they don't do anything. And so when you come out, they borderline, they want you to have a GED. One gentleman did 40 years. He never expected to get out. So he did nothing. And so when he got out, here it is, I'm helping him to study for the GED. It made it very, very challenging, because they were saying, upload your diploma. And he didn't have any of that. So it's important that the guys on the inside do the work. Don't look, you could have a life sentence, but you never know if you're going to get out, because this one particular gentleman, he had a life sentence. And then one night they came to his cell and say, hey, get your stuff together. You're going to a pre-release unit in the morning. Right? And he was so unprepared because he thought he was going to die in prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear Kevin is helping out within the same system that kept him, but also that he is helping others to walk through this journey, because it's not easy, but people will respect him because they're speaking to someone that's walked that journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they'll
and
pay attention.
That was one of the things that attracted me to him too, is that when we would talk, he would always talk about the brothers, and I would hear him on the phone, you know, talking to someone who had gotten out and they were struggling, and Kevin was coaching them and talking to them, and he would always end the conversation with man, I love you, man, I love you. And I thought that was so cool. I was like, oh, he was just so yeah. So he never forgot about, and to this day, don't forget about the guys on the inside. Never forget about the guys on the inside.
And I love the title of your book. So tell us about the book. And I know you mentioned before that you are actually donating your book to the prisons in all the states, and you're up to a few states now?
I've 8 states, and next week I'm going to be mailing out to 3 more states. Yeah. So the book, of course, the book was written to share our story and to raise awareness, because again, no one was talking about this. No one was talking about this. There's so many family members who are struggling with a loved one who has come home, but some have told me, I'm private. I'm a private person. So you rather stay private than talk about this. So I chose to talk about it. And when I started the group, the private group, a safe space for women, I was like, these women are getting it, but I need the guys to get it on the inside. So that's when I decided that I would donate a copy of my book to every prison in the United States. Kevin is the one that came up with Caught in the Aftermath part of it. And I didn't know it. I asked him to write the foreword in the book, and I didn't know it that he was afraid. I didn't know it. He said, how do you write a book that's birthed from the pain that you caused somebody? And he said, how do you expose to the world the challenges that you've had with mental health? And I didn't know it, I never knew it until he wrote it. I was like, wow. But he said, you do so with pride. Because if she's asked you to write it, then healing has taken place. And it had. So, yeah.
And you're helping so many other people by shedding the light on it, both of you. And to me, that's why you write it. That's why he's involved as well. Mm-hmm. Because so many people need to hear this. And I'm just so glad that I can provide this platform for you to share him and to share Kevin with us too. He sounds amazing.
He is an amazing guy. I can call him and say, hey, I need you to do a Facebook Live with me. Will you do it live with me? Yeah.
So where are you mentally now?
I'm in a good place.
Anything next for you?
Next for me is to continue. I'm writing a course. I'm creating a course that talks about arrested development and talks about post-incarceration syndrome. And that is to get that course inside of prisons. Get that course. I've already had people to reach out to me and say, hey, when is that course going to be ready? So that they can understand, again, You know, I receive letters from guys that say, thank you for writing your book. I now understand. I now understand what's wrong with me. And I think it's such a shame that prisons do not have mental wellness education inside. And I'm finding out I'm not a clinician. I just have a PhD in learned experience. And I found that when I'm talking to the guys and debunking what mental health is and what it is not, they're more open. They're more open to talk about it then, right? But we have it like, you know, something's wrong with you and you're dysfunctional and no, it's just you need someone to help you to navigate your thinking. Just help you to navigate thinking and get that chatter out of your head, right? And so when you talk to them like that, they're like, okay, yeah. This one gentleman, he went in at 15. He got out at 54. And I said, when you first went in, did they do any kind of mental health evaluation? He said, no. I said, what? He said, no, ma'am. I said, okay, so you went from unit to unit to unit. I said, did you get any kind of mental health evaluation when you went to those different units? He said, no, ma'am. I said, so you never talked to anybody? You've been in prison 39 years. You never talked to anybody? He said, no, ma'am. I said, well, why didn't you reach out and go and talk to somebody? And he said, Miss Bruno, he said, when I hear the word mental health, he said, I think it means that I'm crazy, right? And you have to think about it. At 15 years old, he ain't worried about no mental health. All he hears them say, Bobo crazy, or that boy been locked up, that boy crazy, right? So that's the mindset that he developed, you know. And
at 15, he's a baby. A 15-year-old, even a 20-year-old, 21, you're still babies.
I'm telling you, yeah, yeah. So we as a society and we as the prison system, we need to do a better job in educating on mental wellness. We need to. Just my thought, they don't want that inside. They don't want that inside. I've had some women to say, oh, not my loved one. He got it. He has his bachelor's and he has his, you know, da-da-da. Okay. So intellectually, he's highly developed, but emotionally, he's underdeveloped. You can have all the degrees in the world, but if you went to prison at a young age, there's a high probability emotionally you're not developed.
Yeah. So, Ms. Shelia, I want to just say you are absolutely beautiful and amazing and strong woman. And I certainly thank you on behalf of all the viewers for sharing your journey with us. Any parting words, anything you would love to say from this journey?
You know, I just want to say, as society as a whole, we have to stop stigmatizing those who have been incarcerated. You know, we have to be open to talk about mental wellness. Truth be told, we've all had some type of mental health issues at some point in our lives. And so, and another thing that I said, if you see anyone who has been to prison, you come in contact with anybody who has been to prison, just say, welcome home, regardless of how long they've been out. They've never heard you say it. And when you say welcome home to a returning citizen, it makes them feel really, really good. And I want to thank you again, Dawn. Thank you for this opportunity to be on your amazing platform, for opening your doors, allowing me to come in and share this very, very important topic. Thank you so much for what you do with the kids. I think that is phenomenal. And so you guys just keep doing what you're doing, and I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the kids, because I just know in providing them a safe platform to inspire and motivate each other, that maybe we can prevent less kids getting into trouble. So a good point in how we raising our kids, how we protecting our kids at a young age, having them avoid getting into the jail and prison system to begin with.
That's it.
Molestation of our children is unacceptable as well, because they may make poor judgments after that.
Yeah. And parents, just keep an eye on the kids. Keep an eye on your kids. Talk to them. Make sure that you have that line of communication. There's a research that shows that a child who has been bullied, there's a high probability that that child will end up in prison. And so just make sure you're talking to your kids about being a bully, or if they've been bullied. Just talk to the kids, because they are sentencing 12 years old to life without parole. So just make sure you're talking to your babies.
Thank you. And how can we find you?
You can find me on all of my social media platforms, on LinkedIn, IG, Facebook, Wife After Prison. My website is wifeafterprison.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bruno, for your time.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank the viewers. Remember to share this video, like it, and leave us a comment. Have an amazing week.
All right.
Bye.